I have a superpower. I'm an introverted extrovert. So the technical term for what I am would be an ambivert. And I think I would make a wonderful mutant in Marvel's next X-Men film. So here's my mutant bio. I'm Sherelle X, citizen of Wakanda, resting bitch face, heart of vibranium, seemingly cold-blooded. I'm part hero, part anti-hero, and I'm weaponized with an unassuming smile and an invisibility cloak. And I have a skill for being alone, but not necessarily being lonely. So I discovered this power as a little girl. I have one sibling, a brother, but I was an 8-year-old girl and he a 16-year-old boy. So I kind of felt like an only child, and that shaped my world accordingly. So my father was gone, off to Atlanta, and my mother worked all the time. So that left me to my own devices, and my extroverted self loved to sing and to dance and to draw and write poetry, but my introverted self never let anybody know about any of that. Fast forward to high school, I remember being a high school senior, getting prepared to go to prom. So I was gonna go by myself because no one asked me to go, and I would not ask anybody else to go. I'd probably rather die first. So, you know, the extroverted part of me actually wanted to go to prom and wanted to dance all night. But the introverted part of me was totally, you know, fine and content with going alone. But when I told my family that I was going by myself, insert gasp, you can't go by yourself. So to compromise with everyone, I ended up taking my cousin, BJ, and we actually ended up having a really decent time. Now, you know, as an adult, I have lived in about 5 cities and as little as about 7 years. So Detroit, Chicago, Fort Wayne in Indiana, Louisville, and now Atlanta. So my power is that I have the resolve to pick up and start over, go on a new adventure, just like this. New city, new address, new job, new life. But my kryptonite is that I can start over very easily, leaving people and places behind, and with only forging superficial relationships, so that I don't have the emotional drainage that would come with maintaining real, long-lasting relationships. So I told you guys that I was an introverted extrovert, but what if I told you that the older I get, I'm really more of a extroverted introvert? So I'm only really extroverted anymore when I kind of have to be. So if I'm training folks at my job, then I'm extroverted. Or if the pastor says, turn to your neighbor, shake their hand, introduce yourself, then I'm an extrovert. If I'm at a networking event where I have to be extroverted, then I'm extroverted. But when I'm away from people, I have a big sigh of relief. So I date, but I only really date because people say, well, you're young, you should date. Everybody wants companionship, right? And I think to myself, well, I have to text, but then I have to talk on the phone to people, and then I have to like potentially get dressed and leave out of my house and sacrifice my time. It sounds a little like a job. So speaking of job, that's actually what brought me to, Atlanta. So 9 months ago, I decided to, move here. And people always ask me, well, how do you like Atlanta? But for me, I say it's okay. It's a city just like any other city in my introverted world, because I have my apartment, I have my son, I have some food, I have some books, and Netflix. So someone once told me, though, that you are an island unto yourself. So the great thing about that for you is that nobody can get on. But the bad part about that is that you can't get off. So when I moved to Atlanta, I decided that I was going to think outside of the box, get out of my head, get out of my apartment, and ultimately get out of my own way. I said that I was going to make friends and go on dates and join organizations and actually participate in church instead of just attending. And ultimately, I was going to start making a conscious effort to have some roots. So here's my progress report. So my extroverted self made a friend who I really, had a good time hanging out with, but my introverted self dumped her. And my extroverted self actually mustered up the energy to go on some dates, but my introverted self determined that he talked entirely too much and it would be nauseating to continue to be bothered. My extroverted self actually went through the steps of joining a ministry at a church, but my introverted self started to get anxiety around the time commitment and the added responsibility that will be required for me to be efficient and to be effective. And I said that I was going to join an organization, and I did. And so my introverted self has kind of been a spectator, and my extroverted self is speaking to you now. Thank you.
Yes.